All right, thanks for staying with us here on Morning Live. Now, yesterday, after several hours of deliberation, the proposal to amend Section 25 of the Constitution was concluded by the Constitutional Review Committee. And this, of course, to allow for the process of land expropriation without compensation. Now, 12 members of the ANC and EFF and the NFP voted for an amendment, while 4 members of the DA and other smaller opposition parties voted against it. An opposition party and other stakeholders will now challenge this decision in court. Now, let's discuss this further with ANC Member of Parliament Vincent Smith, who was present at the meeting. Thanks so much for coming through.
Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners.
So let's start off by just getting a sense of what the deliberations were like yesterday, because the understanding is that it was quite robust.
Well, the deliberations have been robust even from the time that we were in the provinces, and you don't expect anything different. The answers, or the question that we had to answer really was, does the Constitution need to be amended to allow for expropriation without compensation, being one of the tools and not the only tool? And of course there were views that differed in the committee, as there were views that differed even in the public.
Now, firstly, and it relates to our question that we are asking here on Morning Live today, what does this actually mean in real terms? Because many South Africans are concerned, especially about how this relates to property rights. So if you're explaining this to a 5-year-old, they say that's the litmus test. If you can get a 5-year-old to understand it, explain to us, what does this actually mean?
Well, what we are saying is that, first of all, we need to disrupt the apartheid spatial patterns. You have vast tracts of land that are idle, used for speculation purposes. And if that land can be used for the interest of the public, that land should be used for the interest of the public after negotiating, of course, with the owners. But it should never be a situation where that land cannot be used because of the price that the owners are asking. And we're saying that expropriation without compensation should be but one method. So it's about giving our people access to land equitably. We can't have 87% of the land owned by a minority of South Africans. Secondly, we are saying that allow black South African farmers or aspirant farmers to be participants in the agricultural space. It can't be that we only talk about the established and keep on saying emerging. When are they also going to be established? So we're saying open the space for black farmers to participate. Debunk this notion that if black farmers participate, there will be detrimental effects on food security. We don't believe that it would be. And of course, we're saying there should be equal access to everybody in South Africa in terms of land, not only agricultural, but also residential land.
But what does this mean for property rights?
Well, it doesn't mean anything for property rights other than we are saying to government, identify land that can be redistributed to people so that they have an opportunity to participate, as I said, in the agricultural economy, and also to have residential properties closer to their places of work. We can't continue to have dormitory provinces or dormitory suburbs far away from places of work. So we are saying, let the land be shared equally or equitably amongst all South Africans.
Mr. Smith, many are asking, it's 24 years into this democracy. Why hasn't the ANC moved with, greater speed to address this particular matter? Why did it have to take the EFF to come in and basically give impetus to this?
Well, we must first acknowledge that 24 years has been 24 years too long. And there's been maybe a delay on our side. There's been lots of reasons. There was capacity constraints in terms of the state. We tried and worked on the willing buyer, willing seller option, which proved to be a stumbling block. And at our conference in December last year, we took a decision that, look, we need to now expedite the process of land reform, and that's what we're doing. So I don't think there's an excuse why it took us 24 years, but today we are determined that it should happen as speedily as possible. So
but why didn't you, as the ANC, drive the process? You basically co-signed onto what the EFF had proposed. Why didn't you put it on the table?
Well, we did. We did in terms of the conference resolution saying, go and do it.
But that's a conference resolution, and there are many others that you haven't implemented as the ANC.
I agree with you, but we would have at some point put it onto the table. And that they beat us to it, maybe we should acknowledge it. I don't want to say they were opportunistic, but it was really our resolution that we had taken in December. And yes, they're the ones that put it on the parliamentary agenda. And that's the reality that we face.
So was the ANC perhaps opportunistic, given, we are going into an election year, and this would, of course, one would imagine for many of the voters out there, be something that they would look at in determining who they would vote for?
Well, we have always taken our resolutions from conference and implemented them. We might have done them 3 years or 4 years after conference, but this was something that the conference was very adamant and determined that we do. And it's what we are doing. So it's got nothing to do with elections. It's got to do with conference resolution and restoring the dignity of the majority of South Africans. Absolutely not electioneering.
And on that point, the EFF, they are somewhat adamant that they want to see this passed in this sitting. And the ANC have come out confirming that it's not going to happen before the elections. Why is that?
Well, Section 74 of the Constitution spells out how you amend the Constitution. For instance, you've got to advertise for 30 days in the Government Gazette. I would assume after the 30 days has passed, we'd have to go for public hearings and engage with the community. Beyond that, it must then still go for another 30 days before it can be voted upon in Parliament and get a two-thirds majority. And if you look at those processes, as well as the fact that we're going into the festive season where people are away, I don't think that it's realistic to expect that this would happen before the end of May. And therefore, I don't think we should be raising expectations.
And additionally, there seemingly will be some court challenge to this resolution to amend the Constitution, because some of the opposition parties have indicated that they will be going that route because, as a committee, you ignored their objections. So was that process flawed?
Well, I don't think it was flawed. I think that is a fig leaf. Firstly, they talk about the fact that we never applied our minds to the written submissions. We had more than 40 people come to talk to us on the written submissions. We had the 3 weeks where members were able to go and peruse the written submissions. So some of us applied our minds in terms of the written submissions. But they also raised issues like there was intimidation, and therefore people weren't able to participate. Where I chaired, there was absolutely no intimidation. Everybody was allowed to speak in the language of their choice, and everybody spoke for the same amount of time. They also raised the issue that President Ramaphosa made a pronouncement in July, and by making that pronouncement, he literally cut the process, or cut us by the knees. That's not true. President Ramaphosa made a pronouncement as the leader of the ANC on an ANC position, as all other political party leaders did. So those are the reasons why they're saying it's flawed, and we don't think that will stand in any court.
And then, Mr. Smith, before I let you go, regarding the Bosasa matter and yourself, and also just you were saying that, the Integrity Committee of the ANC would perhaps be looking into that. Have they? Have you met with the Integrity Committee over that matter?
I'm awaiting for the Ethics Committee, for instance. They will call me when they're ready to call me, and so will the ANC when they're ready to call me. So those matters are being processed. And as soon as they are processed, or as soon as I'm summoned, I'm more than willing to attend and to give my side of the story.
And what is your side of this story in terms of conflict of interest? This is a company that regularly gets joined to government by doing business with it. And it is said that you then go and seek a loan from this company. Conflict of interest because you chair some of these committees that where you have to practice oversight over what they do.
I've addressed those matters in my response to the Ethics Committee, and I would rather ventilate them when I get to the Ethics Committee or the Integrity Committee, but those have been addressed.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. And that was ANC MP Vincent Smith. Constitutional Review Committee yesterday concluded the amendment to the Constitution to provide for expropriation of land without compensation. Let's take a break.